The Viking Age is a man's world, but it would be nothing without the industrious, cunning, and spirited women behind the curtains. And yet, sometimes they were the ones holding the reins, and they could possess true authority. Here are three examples of girl power in the Viking Age. The first example, you might have heard of her, is Queen Emma of Normandy. She is known in Anglo-Saxon records as Elfgivu, and she was a formidable political figure who served as the consort of two successive English monarchs, Ethelred the Unready and Knud the Great. She was born as the daughter of Duke Richard I of Normandy and his Scandinavian consort Gunvor, so because of that, she can be deemed as a genealogical and cultural blend of three different elements: the Norse, Norman, and English ruling elites. She gained prominence firstly due to her clever marital alliances, but also her proactive engagement in the realpolitik of the age and the deliberate management of her dynastic legacy. Emma's political agency is most visible in the way she deployed deception to maintain stability during a period of administrative void. Emma and Ethelred's marriage ended with Ethelred's death in London in 1016, and then her sons had been ranked after all of the sons of Ethelred's first wife, the eldest of whom was Edmund Ironside. Emma attempted to get her older son Edward recognized as the heir, but this was opposed by Edmund Ironside and his allies, and they eventually revolted against Ethelred. Then Knud gained control of most of England after he defeated Edmund Ironside, and after that they decided to divide the kingdom. In this moment, Knud marries Emma, and her sons from her marriage to Ethelred were sent to live in Normandy. While King Knud was occupied in England, Denmark faced imminent threats from the Swedish and Norwegian armies. And in response, Emma collaborated with Earl Ulf to elevate her adolescent son Harthacnut to the Danish throne. But to achieve this, she utilized trickery to obtain Knud's royal seal, and then she forged letters to authorize the appointment, a maneuver that ensured local military leadership, despite the lack of a clearly defined official role for a queen regent in the king's absence. Harthacnut afterward assembled a fleet to invade England in 1039, and when Harold Harefoot died in 1040, he was invited to become king. A year later, he invited his half-brother Edward the Confessor to England as well. The history of the kings of Norway, the Heimskringla, portrays these actions with a degree of sympathy because it is suggested that her intervention was a necessary defense of the state's integrity rather than a subversive coup d'etat. As the mother of two future English kings, Harthacnut by Knud and Edward the Confessor by Ethelred, she occupied a unique position of authority that persisted through multiple successions. She was also a sophisticated patron of political literature. She commissioned a source called the Encomium Emae Reginae, specifically to curate her public reputation and to reinforce the legitimacy of her children's claims to the throne. Within the textual tradition of the king sagas, she is consistently distinguished by the title Drottning, so queen. And in this way, the authors would recognize her legitimate status and her capacity to operate as an active politician within the traditionally male-dominated public sphere. The second example is Gunnhild, the mother of kings, Konungamoðir. She is also a formidable character, but also a very polarizing figure in Old Norse history and literature. She was active in the 10th century as the wife of Eirikr Bloodaxe and the mother of a cohort of kings who ruled Norway from 961 to 975. Her career was defined primarily by her role as advisor, first to her husband and later as regent for her sons. Snorri Sturluson's Heimskringla describes her as intelligent, well-educated, but also a grim person, often serving as the intellectual counterpoint to Eirikr's reliance on brute force. While Eirikr frequently failed to solve problems that could not be settled with violence, Gunnhild provided a political foresight necessary to maintain their claim to the Norwegian throne. Following his death in 954, she became the central figure of the Inglingar dynasty. She successfully fostered solidarity among her 8 sons, ensuring that they ruled jointly rather than succumbing to the more traditional fratricidal violence that had plagued her husband's generation. Interestingly, Snorri notes that she and her sons would often meet to talk things over together and to decide how to rule. And this would suggest that she participated in some sort of formal council or governance. Another recurring motif in Gunhild's biography is her association with sorcery, particularly the form we know as seidr, which he allegedly learned from the Sami people. Snorri recounts a legend wherein Erik's men found Gunhild in a hut in Finnmark, so in the faraway north, where she was being instructed in magic by 2 Sami sorcerers. She eventually orchestrated their deaths to join Erik Bloodaxe, and this is the sort of narrative that would link her political rise with supernatural mastery. In Egil Saga, she is depicted presiding over a Disablot, some sort of sacrifice to the female spirits during the winter nights, and it would have been a role that combined cultic leadership with the social performance of hosting a feast. Her magic is often depicted as manipulative. She is also credited with shapeshifting into a swallow to disrupt her enemy, Egil Skallagrimsson, and she also cast a curse of impotence upon her lover, Hrútur, after he spurned her, something we find out more about in the saga of Njol. So the sagas, despite their attempt to nuance the storytelling, they do tend to use her as a convenient villain to justify Icelandic autonomy against the dangerous allure of the Norwegian court. Despite her negative reputation, she was a significant patron of the skaldic arts. After Eirikr fell at Steinmo, she commissioned the anonymous poem Eiriksmål to commemorate his entry into Valhall. She remains, in a way, a sort of transitional figure because, on the one hand, she seems to embody this older mythical trait of the Valkyrie, Volva, sorceress figure. At the same time, she does seem to operate within the increasingly bureaucratic and violent political landscape of 10th century state formation. And the third character hails from the east, Queen Olga of Kyiv, who reigned as a regent from about 945 to 957. She's known in Old Norse as Helga, meaning the Holy One, although she was anything but that. She stands as one of the most comprehensively documented female characters and again a political figure to be reckoned with. Although her precise origins are debated, there are some sources claiming she was brought from Pskov, from northwestern Russia, and was of Varangian tongue, which was a common term for the Scandinavians operating in Eastern Europe. Following the murder of her husband Prince Igor or Ingvar in Old Norse by the Derevlians, who would have been a tribe rebelling against his excessive demands for tribute, she assumed the regency for her son Sviatoslav, and she managed to restructure the Kievan Rus state through a combination of strategic ruthlessness and also administrative innovation. The Russian Primary Chronicle records the consolidation of power through a meticulously staged revenge against the Derevlians, which served to eliminate political rivals and establish her absolute authority. So it is told that when the Derevlians sent 20 noble envoys to propose a marriage between Olga and their Prince Mol, she tricked them into being carried in their boat to her palace, where they were dropped into a pit and buried alive. Would have been a grim parody of a royal ship burial. Then a second delegation of distinguished men was invited to cleanse themselves in a bathhouse, and which Olga subsequently sealed and set on fire. Then she traveled to her husband's grave in Dareva, ostensibly to mourn. After getting 5,000 Drevlians drunk at a funeral feast, she ordered her retinue to massacre them. During a year-long siege of the city of Iskorosten, she requested a symbolic tribute of 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows per house, which would have been an odd request. She then ordered sulfur-lit rags to be attached to the birds. When they returned to their nests, the city was consumed by fire, which allowed her to kill or to enslave the survivors. Now, the incendiary bird is actually a recurring literary motif in Norse and I think, world literature. But excavations at this place in Uskorosten confirm that a high status hill fort was indeed destroyed by fire during her reign. So, although the story is definitely far fetched, the Russian Primary Chronicle is generally a source that should be regarded with great suspicion. We do have some elements of truth hidden now and then. And yeah, this was not a time to show weakness, and Olga definitely lived up to the expectations of the age. But beyond her military vengeance, she was also a clear eyed administrator who transitioned the Rus from a system of sporadic looting to a more structured state. For example, she established a lasting system of trading posts, hunting preserves, boundary markers as well along the Msta and Luga rivers, and these persisted for centuries. She also standardized taxes and tributes, effectively centralizing power and stabilizing the economy for her success. Her status was such that she maintained a private retinue and diplomatic representatives, which is shown, for example, in the 945 treaty with Byzantium, listing a specific envoy representing her at the court. Her visit to Constantinople, which would have taken place sometime in the middle of the 10th century, also remains a masterclass in diplomacy. She was received with immense ceremony by Emperor Constantine VII Porphyrogenitos, as detailed in his work, Their Ceremonies, and it is told that she accepted baptism, but according to the chronicles, she outmaneuvered the emperor's marriage proposal by insisting he sponsor her baptism himself. So by becoming her godfather, Constantine VII rendered the marriage unlawful under Christian law. And this allowed Olga to maintain her independence while securing the prestige and trade advantages of a Christian alliance with Byzantium. Despite her personal piety, she does seem to have retained a priest until her death. Such visits were heavily focused on securing trading rights for the Rus. In her final years, Olga continued to manage the state, and she even protected her grandsons from a siege by the Pechenegs in 968. She died in 969 and was the first of the Rus elite to request a Christian burial without the traditional pagan funeral feast, which would have definitely been a significant ideological break from the old ways. In the 16th century, she was even declared a saint. So, yeah, in a way, she did live up to her own name. So that was it this time. I really hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share in the comments your favorite historical female character. If you're interested in learning more about women in the Viking Age, there is a whole lecture on the channel, and I also have a video about pregnancy in the Viking Age. If you want to support my history project, the best way to do so is a membership, of course. It does come along with extra material, including some of the classes I teach at Signum University. Otherwise, there is also a PayPal account where you can contribute. Follow me on YouTube and also on Substack. This was Irina. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.